Hey there. So today we're going to talk about biotechnology and ethics. So I have already titled my notebook page 101 Biotech Ethics Notes. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we need to talk about is what's called the Human Genome Project. So switch colors real quickly. So the Human Genome Project had basically one big goal, and it was started back in the 1990s. So the goal of the Human Genome Project was to determine the order or sequence of nitrogen bases in human DNA. So this group of scientists and geneticists wanted to sequence the entirety of the human genome. So we wanted to take all 46 chromosomes and we wanted to figure out exactly which genes were on which chromosomes and um, and where on the chromosome were all of those genes. So we wanted to sequence the entire thing. And you might be asking yourself, right, why? Why in the world would we want to sequence the entirety of the human genome? Well, if doctors know what a normal, and I put normal in parentheses, because by normal we mean, no genetic disorders or non-disjunction events. So if doctors know what a normal human DNA sequence is, they can then compare, right? They can compare a sick human's DNA with the normal human's DNA. And then we can figure out if that sick person, right, if they have a mutation, underline that one, that is making them sick. It's making them sick. So if we know exactly where the problem is, if we can point to a karyotype and say, oh, this sick person, right, they have a mutation on chromosome 10, because we can compare it to a normal person's DNA that doesn't have that mutation, then we can identify exactly what is making that person sick. And if we're able to identify what's making them sick, we can then try to create cures for that disease or maybe that cancer. So we call that gene therapy. So gene therapy is definitely an experimental treatment for disease. So again, these doctors are able to identify the mutation, hey, it's on chromosome 10, there's something going on here. And so we can try to treat that disease now using gene therapy. So this would be when scientists, right, or the doctors, right, so they can insert a normal, healthy copy of a gene into a person, right, with the mutation. So we basically can try to replace the damaged gene with a copy of the normal, healthy version. So that way the person can use the new healthy version of the gene instead of relying on the mutated copy that's making them sick. So that's, I mean, pretty amazing, the fact that we can, and we did this, we accomplished in the early 2000s, definitely by the year 2010, the Human Genome Project was a success. Scientists and doctors all around the world, this wasn't just in the United States, this was a multi-nation effort to sequence the entirety of the human genome, and they were absolutely successful. And modern genetics and modern medicine is based on a lot of what we learned from this project. So the development of this biotechnology, of gene therapy, came directly from the results of the Human Genome Project. So we have, in more recent news, we've used gene therapy to help cure, I believe it was cystic fibrosis, or maybe it was sickle cell. Now that I'm telling you, I can't remember. There was a woman, I believe it was down here in the South. I think she had sickle cell disease, and she underwent an extremely experimental treatment where they basically replaced the mutated gene that was causing her to have sickle cell. They gave her a normal copy, and I believe she's just fine. She did not have any side effects. So gene therapy can certainly work. It can help make people's lives better. But let's get into the kind of ethics of this, right? Some possible concerns, right? So what could go wrong here with gene therapy? So, well, there's a couple things I want to point out. Let's start with insurance companies. Now, you probably don't know a lot about your health insurance because your parents obviously do all of that for you because you are a minor. But insurance companies, they basically say, hey, you pay us a little bit every month, and then if you get sick, we'll make sure to cover most of the bills so that you don't have to pay everything on your own. But the concern here is that if these companies have access to a person's DNA, they may choose to not insure people that have a risk of developing a disease later in life. So a concern here would be, if you've ever thought about doing 23andMe or any of those DNA family tree things where you send in your DNA sample and they'll tell you who you're related to. The concern there is that your DNA is everything that you are. So if a company gets a hold of that and they see that, oh, you carry the gene for, Alzheimer's, which, obviously doesn't appear until much, much later in life, but they're like, hey, we don't want to insure you because Alzheimer is very expensive to, take care of, and we just don't want to pay for that. Or, okay, that's fine. We will give you health insurance, but you're going to have to pay more. So that's kind of one of those ethical questions that we as a society are going to have to ask ourselves, with all of this gene sequencing, and everything we know about the human DNA, what are we going to do for companies that are in the healthcare business? A second possible concern is with genetically modified food. This is food whose DNA has been changed around to make the food bigger, to make it juicier, to maybe make it more healthier, to make it withstand, extreme temperatures or anything. But there is some concern of allergies to the modified food. Allergies to the modified food could make people sick. Because maybe we took a gene from, something in the peanut family, maybe because, they're more resistant to drought, and we put it inside of, another plant in order to make it more resistant to drought. But, some people are worried that they might inherit that allergy from the peanut, and now they won't be able to eat that other food because they have a peanut allergy. So that is one small concern about GMOs. But it is still, again, it raises that question, should we be manipulating our food if there is a potential risk that people could get sick? Again, a question we're going to have to ask ourselves definitely in the near future. All right, our third concern, our third kind of ethical issue here, designer babies. So if doctors are using gene therapy to treat diseases, then some people might want to change around the DNA of their egg or sperm so that they could have, smarter, taller, more attractive babies. So if we use gene therapy to treat diseases, right, then why not use the same technology to let people choose the DNA that goes in, right, the egg or sperm cells. And I'm running out of room here, so I'm just going to do right here down as a bullet point, right? So again, if I'm choosing the DNA that goes into my egg or sperm cells, right, I could decide that I want a baby that's going to be tall, right? It's going to be smart. I want it to be more athletic. I want it to definitely be, attractive. I want my baby to have brown hair. I want it to have, maybe a certain skin color, a certain, eye color. The possibilities are really limitless. And so that is, one question, again, we are going to have to figure out is, where do we limit ourselves in gene therapy? Do we stop at just treating diseases, or do we allow it to go a little bit further? And it's more than just making a tall, smart, attractive, athletic baby. Again, if I know that I carry the gene for Alzheimer's, could I go to a genetic counselor and say, I want to have a baby, but I want to make sure that I do not pass that Alzheimer's gene down to my baby? Technically, I am designing my baby. I'm ensuring that it does not get this terrible Alzheimer's disease, but that's not natural. Again, you're supposed to roll the dice. So just some questions, right, that we need to ask ourselves, as a society and as a country, on what we want to see for our future. So that's it for our notes here on biotechnology and ethics. If you have any questions or concerns, just let me know. I'll see you next time.